Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our 2025 World Environment Day event. We're really pleased you've taken the time to join us today, and we have some great speakers who will be talking in different ways on the theme of sustainable home, sustainable planet, and how housing can play a part in a greener future. Henrietta Blackmore, our National Director, I'm going to hand over to her in a moment to formally welcome you to the event, but I just wanted to draw attention to the option on screen to ask questions during the presentation, so please do use that if you have any questions. And now I will hand over to Henrietta. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gemma, and hi everybody. Welcome. I'm Henrietta Blackmore. I'm the National Director of Habitat for Humanity, Great Britain, and I'm so pleased you could join us today as we mark World Environment Day. At Habitat for Humanity, we believe that access to safe, decent housing is a fundamental human right, but we also recognise that the way we build, rebuild, or adapt homes has a huge impact on our environment. We have to find ways to balance the urgent need for decent housing with the reality that nearly 40% of global emissions come from construction and building. At the same time, we know that climate change is hitting the most vulnerable people the hardest, especially those living in inadequate housing, who are at greatest risk from the growing number of extreme weather events we are all witnessing around the world. That's why, across the world, Habitat for Humanity is exploring creative ways to tackle housing and climate challenges together, putting our collective responsibility to both people and the planet at the heart of our mission. Today's event is a chance to share two really inspiring examples of that work in action. First, we'll hear from our team here in Great Britain about our Empty Spaces to Homes programme. This is an innovative local response to the housing crisis that brings disused buildings back into use. It's a model that reduces waste, creates dignified homes, and helps to revitalise neighbourhoods right here in Britain. I'm so pleased that we will be joined by James Drinkwater from the Louders Foundation, who shares our commitment to aligning housing with environmental goals and who has supported this work. After that, we're going to travel virtually to Cambodia to explore our climate-friendly village project, an initiative that combines low-carbon housing, renewable energy and community-led design to build long-term resilience in the face of climate change. Both projects show what's possible when we think differently, when we place people and the planet at the centre of housing solutions, and most importantly, when we collaborate. Housing is not a challenge that can be solved in isolation. It always needs partnerships to be effective. So I'll now hand back to Gemma to introduce our first speaker, but thank you again for joining us today. I really hope you leave the session feeling as inspired and energised as I am.
Thank you, Henrietta. I'm going to hand over now to our first speaker, Guy Parker. Guy is our UK Housing Advocacy Manager, and he is going to be speaking to particular aspects of our domestic programme here in Great Britain. Thank you, Guy.
So as Gemma said, my name's Guy Parker and I work for Habitat in Great Britain. I'm here to speak to you today about our Empty Spaces to Homes programme. It's a programme we're really proud of and we're really excited for, and hopefully at the end of these 10 minutes you will be as well. So Empty Spaces to Homes is a project that we've been working on for a number of years. It's very much about, as I'll share my screen, it's very much about how we can make better use of the non-residential buildings that we have for homes. We think that's an area that is underutilized at the moment, that there are a lot of empty buildings, whether those are old factories, retail units, other kind of commercial office premises that are sitting empty. Nobody's quite sure what to do with them, and we think actually often social or affordable homes could be the answer to that. And there are a number of benefits to that, which I will get into. So the programme's been going on for several years. We've been doing projects all over the world where we've taken existing empty buildings and thought about how they could be social and affordable homes, whether that's in the UK, in Germany, in Poland, in Australia, in Japan, in Singapore, and Hong Kong. Yeah, it's a global program, but I'm going to focus specifically on what we're doing in Great Britain for the presentation today. So a bit of context for UK housing, although I'm sure it's something that's familiar to many people. We know that there's a real need for more homes in the UK, that we have fewer homes per head than our comparator countries. Although interestingly, we do also have quite a large number of rooms per head. So clearly there is an issue there regarding the number of people that are living in homes that are bigger than they necessarily need. Number of houses being built is a major challenge. The graph in the bottom left, I think, is particularly interesting to illustrate the way that house building numbers has fallen over recent years. And as you can see in that chart, if you look at the red bit, a big reason why there's been less houses being built is the lack of local authority house building that's happened since the kind of end of the 1970s. Housing quality, we know, is an issue in the UK, although it is improving in recent years. Housing need is something that's in the headlines a lot at the moment. So we know that social housing waiting lists are going up despite local authorities being able to restrict who was qualified for a social home a few years ago. The number of households in temporary accommodation is substantial, and that is a massive issue both for the cost to local authorities, to the life chances of young people, and to the kind of stability of households more generally. Anybody who's tried to buy or rent a house in the UK in recent years will be very familiar with how unaffordable it can be. So I won't dwell on that. The climate issue, which is what the focus of today's webinar is a key one when it comes to empty spaces to homes. So I won't speak to the degree to which climate crisis is a significant issue, because I'm sure we're all familiar with that. But I think it's worth noting the extent to which homes and house building plays its part in expanding the climate crisis, and therefore needs to play its part in expanding its solution to the climate crisis. So clearly, of course, running a home, heating a home, putting the lights on involves significant climate emissions, carbon emissions, but also the construction and destruction of homes is a massive part as well, and that's where empty spaces to homes come in. We believe that if we can make better use of existing buildings, that has major benefits for the climate, it has major benefits for society by creating more of the homes we need, it has major benefits for local economies as well as the budgets of local authorities. And yeah, we think it's a crucial element to solving the housing crisis. So empty spaces to homes, as I say, it's been going on for a few years now. We started a few years ago with some initial scoping of potential projects. We've done some initial conversions in parking in East London in the case of Habitat Great Britain, but also, as I mentioned before, elsewhere in the world. We did some research to understand what the challenge looked like. We've started a coalition where we've brought different organisations together to work together to solve the problem and to build the programme. And now we're in our second phase, which is where we're really trying to scale up. We're trying to see how much further we can go with this, how much difference we can make as an organisation, but also as a wider community. So how are we doing that? There's four main elements to it. The first one, which is the one that I'm supposed to be responsible for, is the advocacy piece. So we know that to deliver change at scale, one of the major things we need to do is to change policy and practice, both at the national level, at the devolved nation level, in city regions, and also in local authorities. So we're putting forward proposals for how we can change our laws, how we can change our practice to make it easier to convert buildings in a way that delivers high quality, affordable, appropriate, safe and secure social and affordable housing. We're also trying to encourage local leaders to take a lead on doing this for their place. We do that in part through events, through webinars like this, as well as through press releases, press articles, and direct engagement with key policymakers. Research, we think, is a key element to both build understanding of the housing crisis, build understanding of the potential solution of empty spaces to homes, but also make us a kind of a credible voice that people should be listening to and engaging with. So we've done a number of things, including looking at the scale of the opportunity, including building a toolkit that people can use if they want to start their own empty spaces to homes project. And we've got a couple of pieces of research in the pipeline that will be seeing the light of day fairly soon, which we're very excited about. One that's looking specifically at the environmental elements. So the researchers there are trying to answer the question, what difference does it make from an environmental point of view when you reuse a building versus building a new one? How can you encourage better consideration of the climate elements of a decision when it comes to what to do with a building, and what the kind of policy implications of that might be? We've also got some work that's going to be published very soon, which we're very excited about, that tries to understand, how many empty buildings are local authorities in the UK currently sitting on, that could potentially provide much needed social homes. So we think that that's going to be a really strong advocating point for us, that we can say, actually, there are some parts of the country that are clearly doing really well, other parts of the country that could do a lot more. Alongside that, we've got demonstrator projects, and we're thinking about this at two levels, really. So on the one hand, we know that there are a lot of empty buildings that if you're in a stretched local authority that's dealing with 10 problems at once, that's constantly fighting fires, actually the tricky building in the corner of the town centre, maybe you don't know quite what to do with it. Maybe it's it's been sitting empty for a while. Well, actually, we want to show you that there are ways you can deal with those buildings. We want to show you that it is possible if you get the right partners together to create great, much needed social homes. So these pictures are from projects that we've done in the past, but we're now looking all over the country for those difficult buildings where actually we think there could be a solution here, and if we can do it, we can show other people how they can do it too. The other side of the demonstrator project coin is those buildings that are that little bit easier, that we think are potentially, there's thousands of them all over the country. So those might be the retail units on the high street where that there is need. It's not that difficult to make that conversion. That it's going to have good infrastructure, good connectivity. And actually, we know that that's possible at scale. So for those kinds of projects, we're thinking actually maybe there's a way that we can bring together institutional capital to think about how we can make that available to a local authority that wants to do this work at scale. The last thing to say is, I guess, how Habitat for Humanity are looking to help. So this is what we think of as our delivery model, if you like. It's a bit of a menu of the ways in which Habitat for Humanity are looking to work with local authorities, with community groups, with perhaps devolved administrations, to say, actually, these are the different parts of the puzzle that we think we can contribute to when it comes to creating a great empty spaces to homes project in your area. So whether it's kind of coordinating and managing the program, accessing different pots of funding, engaging with the community, doing the practical construction, monitoring the evaluation work, and then kind of shouting about all the great stuff that you're doing. That's something there where we feel like we can bring those kind of different tools to the tool chest, and help make your project as successful as possible. So on that note, the last thing I wanted to say was, we've been growing a lot over the last few years, but we think there's a lot more that we can do. So I wanted to put my email on the screen, because what we're looking for now are partners, whether that's a campaigning organization that thinks you're working on similar issues and you'd like to collaborate. Maybe you're connected to a local authority and you think, actually, we could really do something great in our area. Whether you're a political party, I guess, whether you're a community land trust or a community group that'd like to do something in your area, please do get in touch with us, because we'd be really keen to work with you to think about how we can take forward empty spaces to homes, both in your neighbourhood, but also creating social change throughout Great Britain and across the world. So I will stop sharing my screen there, and thank you very much for listening to me, and hand back to Gemma.
Thank you so much, Guy. Thank you for talking us through the Empty Spaces to Homes project, which is one of the principal ways that here in Great Britain we're thinking about that greener future and greener housing intersection. Guy is going to be joined now by a very special guest, James Drinkwater. James is Head of Built Environment at the Louders Foundation, who are involved in the Empty Spaces to Homes programme as a funder, and we're really thrilled that he's joining us here today to continue the conversation with Guy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma, and welcome to James. Thank you for joining us, James. So I wonder if we could kick off by maybe telling us a little bit about what the Louders Foundation does, your focus on the climate and the environment, and perhaps particularly why you focus on the built environment.
Yeah, of course. Well, delighted to be with you all today. We are a philanthropy, so we're a philanthropic foundation that's really focused on trying to challenge and inspire change in some of the world's biggest and most impactful industries in terms of their outsized impact on climate and the environment, the built environment, what we're here to talk about today, finance, fashion, food. So as a philanthropy, we're really trying to bring together all the different actors that make up change in what we term a just transition. So we as a foundation focus on both climate and social equality, and ensuring those two are blended approaches in ensuring a just decarbonisation of those industries. And in terms of making everyone come together, for us, that's the businesses and the investors that we're often working with and challenging, but policymakers and very critically, nothing about us without us, the communities, the workers that are part of and should be at the heart of all of these industries.
Fantastic. And of course, you're a big supporter of Empty Spaces to Homes, which we're incredibly grateful for. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about why you were keen to support Empty Spaces to Homes.
Yeah, well, I mean, aside from Habitat being a great partner, obviously doing great work kind of globally, our work focuses in Europe, in my team, the Built Environment team, where we know to fully decarbonise, we can't just focus on energy efficiency. We have to look at our material economies and using space sensibly. And in a huge housing crisis, which is engulfing the region, this is not just about those most marginalised. The housing crisis effectively threatens to break society in two. This is everyone is now engulfed in this crisis. And we've really got to be smart about the approaches we take. And we can't simply just build our way out of a housing crisis in Europe. We know, and you know better than anyone at Habitat globally, 2 billion people are going to need housing. So in Europe, we have to use all of our carbon very sensibly. And one of the first responses, given there's something like 30 million empty homes around our region in Europe, we have to mind those as a first response to this housing crisis, knowing it is always very difficult to deliver the level of new housing needed. So we were looking across Europe to see who was doing really smart work on trying to understand what was the size of the prize, actually how many empty homes are there that could be converted. There's a brilliant blend of, again, what matters for us, social justice and decarbonisation in this project, providing houses for marginalised communities, but doing that in really resource smart ways, and very strong industry partnerships as well as policy smart, so that you're working with the folk who can get this stuff done and take it to scale, and also working with policymakers to make sure that this is part or a greater part of that stock response to the housing crisis we're facing in Europe. So a fantastic project that hit many of our sweet spots.
Fantastic. And I think one of the most interesting things about the work that Louders does and the work that Louders funds is that kind of system change focus, that you're not just doing your individual projects, and that while that's really important, that you're really focused on changing the whole way in which we live and work. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that kind of system change approach. Why is it that you focus at the kind of macro level rather than just in on the individual projects?
Yeah, well, I think, it's, again, as I mentioned at the start, it's going to take the alignment of all these different actors to scale the kind of approaches that transition whole sectors like the built environment. So engaging across businesses, finance, communities and policymakers, absolutely critical, both to get that sort of, the implementation work done. So very impossible to demonstrate what's possible, as this project is doing through its demonstration projects, but also how that can be scalable at a policy level to become, a stop response in countries across Europe. And that means you need to show that you've got that critical mass of implementation power. Again, not just across the demos, but it's got broad community buy-in. It can be scaled up. Finance and other actors are coming behind this. That's really, really key. And I think for us, again, if you look at the root causes of climate and the housing crisis, they're so closely intertwined, right? We have to really work at a root cause and systems level on this and take that broader perspective. Europe's been trying to up its renovation rate in its climate policy for many, many years, right? And yet a lot of our construction economy goes into new build, about half by volume. And in terms of the labour and the money that flows, I think we think actually scaling up that renovation market that's so key for climate targets and housing targets really is going to require us to take a new look at what new construction is really needed and what's meant. So again, taking that very broad systems perspective and bringing together a group of very nuanced solutions into a new narrative is really key. And hey, it's going to be hard, isn't it? The narrative of simply build, we're just going to deliver this many new homes, and of course no government does, it's a real struggle, is one that needs to be really nuanced now with what does this new solution set from mining empty and vacant properties, particularly post the COVID crisis, to topping up existing structures with lightweight modern construction, right, to mining all of our material flows to make sure we've got resilient housing economies in the future. To what is that going to really look like? It requires us to take that systems perspective to achieve the long-term goals we're setting out.
And I think one of the things that's so interesting and somewhat unique about Louders is that willingness to invest in advocacy, to invest in policy change. Because I think so often we see really important funding for projects that deliver practical change on the ground in place, but maybe are not so willing to say, actually, let's also invest in trying to shift perspectives, shift policy. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the role of philanthropy in that kind of policy change space, because I think it's quite unusual.
Yeah, well, I mean, policy raises or can raise all boats. It can also be done badly, right? I think the critical thing is to show that really communities, the people, are on board with change, that this is something that truly centres them, that they really want, that this is something that can provide work for labourers in our sector. And indeed, it can be financed, that business can scale it up, that these things are viable parts of a new economy, right? So I think policy is in a sense simply the formalization of that process of realization and scaling something up to be mainstream. And it gives markets longer term certainty. And that's something as we transition to a new economy, one that's both kind of climate and community smart, that businesses need. So again, it's the environment in which we all work. We do see enabling that work and across those groups as really, really important, and bringing policymakers absolutely to the table.
And I think one of the things that's really interesting to me, I think, for the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing here in the UK is, you can see some unique policy challenges in different environments, but also some consistencies across places. I wonder if you could speak briefly to what you would see as maybe some of the key policy ask, what you'd really like to see in terms of promoting better use of existing buildings, particularly, I guess, non-residential buildings, which is the focus of Empty Spaces to Homes.
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of our partners across Europe, again, we fund in 10 European countries, so very diverse selection of different national circumstances. But a lot of our partners have been very involved in helping shape things like the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive at a pan-European level, that for the first time has taken that really wider view on what, if we look at the whole carbon impacts of our sector, what are the right pathways to both achieve our climate goals, but be very aware of demographic shifts, the needs of our society, again, centering people in that, not just looking at buildings as a series of kind of energy widgets and materials and whatnot. And And I think one of the pieces of work several of our partners have been involved in, which directly references the great work of Habitat in this programme, is a piece of work that EU's doing on what it calls its whole life carbon roadmap. So what is a roadmap for our sector to really spell out the size of the prize on empty and vacant buildings, what really could be repositioned, what can be mapped, what can be converted, what can't be. Again, where can we build on existing structures? Again, what's the size of the prize and how do we scale the technologies for doing that? Some of our partners are doing great work on, for example, timber and bio-based lightweight modern construction, so natural materials that, rather than the industrial materials, lend themselves to building on top of existing structures. And we know it's pretty hard to make the economics of net zero retrofits stack up. Actually adding additional floor space in cities is one way to alleviate the housing crisis, and you've got to do that through kind of new typologies. So getting a clear sense of the size of the prize, what that solution set looks like, and then how do you scale an industry behind that? How do you create the sort of smarts of, our communities are wonderful, varied, and hyper local, right? That's what we're dealing with in the built environment. You cannot standardize community. It's very much about kind of place, people, culture, but actually really getting much smarter across industry, policymakers, and investors at what that means and how you properly center it. As again, we scale up that new solution set, it's going to require European approaches. Again, it's why the EU and some of its key policies are really critical. And I would say both rolling out that whole life carbon roadmap in all countries, whole life carbon limits. So bringing in a limit that says, actually, this is the kind of what we've got to operate within, and then creating very resource resilient and community smart responses to that, and sharing, stealing with pride, kind of as we share the best approaches that are emerging in different countries across the region, is going to be key. So whole life carbon limits, it'll help us mine existing buildings, changes of things like VAT rules to favour renovation over new build. These are the kind of things that will make a difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm conscious that we're running short on time. I can imagine there's a lot of people that'll be listening to this and trying to work on how to improve our environment at the moment, who will be feeling somewhat pessimistic about the state of geopolitics. So I wonder if we could close with something a bit more positive. When you're looking at cities around the UK, around Europe, around the world, what is it that's making you optimistic in terms of the built environment and the climate movement, and how we can kind of align what are often seen as two areas of tension and into something that feels more positive and optimistic?
Well, it's funny, sort of climate needs and carbon budgets and society's need in a housing crisis, the need to deliver affordable homes at mass scale for people, are often pitted against one another. Something that's made me really excited in lots of the housing work we're funding across Europe is when you're putting together partners who are coming together across those climate and social silos, trying to provide a solution set like the one you're providing in this project that really sort of sits in the sweet spot between those. It's really gaining huge political and societal interest. So I think there is really a space for the kind of solutions we're all looking to drive. And I would say actually one thing that makes me really hopeful in a few of the countries that have imposed these strict carbon limits, like the Denmarks and the usual suspects, a lot of the businesses that were making a lot of money out of new build have done the numbers and realised in a renovation economy, there's still lots of money to be made. I think what we need to ensure is that the jobs are good quality jobs, we centre workers, and that the homes are quality homes that really attend to those in the greatest need. So that's where there's still work to do, but I'm very hopeful. The points of light that are emerging, and I'd love to see us regain common sense as the main argument, right? Rather than highfalutin stuff, mining 30 million empty homes across Europe should be a first response in a housing crisis. We need to regain, I think, the common sense narrative that this should sit at the heart of.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the conversations that we've been having in the UK, you get a real sense that people get it. People understand that we need to do this, but maybe needs a little bit of help to figure out exactly how best to do it, and how to create the environment in which it can be possible to do it at scale. So thank you so much for your time, James. We really appreciate your time today, your support for Empty Spaces for Homes, and the work that allowed us Foundation do more generally. I'd encourage anyone watching this to check out the work that you do in the built environment and also the other areas that you mentioned. But yeah, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time, and we'll pass back to Gemma.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Guy, and thank you to James for joining us today. We're going to hand over now to Poon from Habitat Cambodia, who is going to talk about a project which took a whole community approach to thinking about climate resilience and housing. So I'll hand over to you now, Poon. Thank you.
Okay, so hello from Cambodia. My name is Poon. I am the area program manager at Habitat for Humanity Cambodia. And today I'm very delighted to share with you a project that we have implemented in Habitat Cambodia. So I'm going to share with you the project summary, project location, project design, intervention, impact, sustainability, and the lesson learned from the project implementation. So this project we call ECR project, Empowering Community for Resilient Project. It's funded by Habitat Netherlands, and with 3 years period from July 2020 to June 2023. And the project was implemented in Siem Reap province in Cambodia, aimed to enhance the resiliency of rural remote community to climate change and disaster. So in terms of project location, this project was implemented in Pong Chat village, located in Khun Riem commune, Matesrai district, Siem Reap province, Cambodia. And this village consists of 159 families with 135 houses and about 670 population. And they are up to 51% of the poverty rate there. It means that the family who hold ID pool 1 and ID pool 2. In terms of housing condition, 55 houses were rated as the low and poor quality house. And those areas potential for agricultural activity there because of land available, labor available, as well as some part of the area can access to the water source as well. And 70% of the community drink the purified water distributed by the private company, and the rest, about 30%, they just drink the raw water from the water source like well or pond that are available in the villages. And 50% of the family access to the toilet, they use the toilet, and the rest, about 50%, they practice the open defecation in the forest around the house. And most of part of the village, about 65% difficult to reach to the groundwater. So the people there, they just buy the water from the local seller, that they transport the waters from other neighboring area to sell in the village. And the ECR project was designed with 4 outcomes. The first outcome is related to community-based, inclusive, resilient committee to manage the program, and we build the capacity in planning, implementation, and monitoring. The second outcome is community better able to withstand withdrawals and flooding through the implementation of the inclusive resilient community planning and structural resilience. The third outcome is inclusive climate smart livelihood promoted by biological diversity and resilience. And the last outcome is improve health and well-being of community members through water supply and sanitation. In terms of intervention, there are 4 main components of the project. One is the formation or establishment of community-based decision-making mechanism, and the second one is construction of climate adapted homes, and the third one is the provision of climate smart livelihood intervention. And the last one is building water supply and sanitation provision. In terms of community-based group, the project successfully established the inclusive resilient committee with 25 members in total, and as the community-based mechanism for coordination and decision-making, while also enhancing its capacity for effective planning, implementation, and monitoring the project intervention. The IRC demonstrates its ability to mobilize community resource, labor, as well as the possibility for effective utilizing the same system for the future intervention and program. The second one related to disaster resilient home with climate smart feature. The project support resilient housing construction and improvement. Different type of house like new house, renovation house, repair house, and structural assistance house were support to 127 house for 134 family in Bungchat village. In terms of climate smart livelihood, the project has successfully introduced climate smart adaptation concept through training, enabling many community members to utilize resource effectively for year-round implementation, the livelihood activity. The intervention promote efficient use of biodiversity and foster household resilience by diversifying income resource according to the climate pattern. Health, in terms of health and well-being of the community, the project significantly improve access to water, availability of water source for daily use and for farming activity in the village. The project was awareness activity effectively brought about behavior change of the community people in the village. In terms of project impacts, the project has successfully demonstrated the benefit of strategic program design and collaborative implementation approach. And the project serves as an example of a method that result in long-lasting improvement in community resilience, structural climate resilient livelihood, as well as the water sanitation and hygiene. The project brought about visible positive change in life of stakeholders and beneficiaries, though they acknowledge some limitation as well. However, in overall, they remain satisfied with the intervention, and a major accomplishment was that the project greatly strengthened and promote women leadership and involvement in decision-making at the community level. In terms of project sustainability, several factors supported the sustainability and implication of the project approach going forward. These include community participation, financial sustainability strategies, capacity building initiative, innovative solutions, performance management, strategy partnership. And all these will be important for long-term success and continuation of the project's benefit. In terms of throughout the project implementation, we have record some lessons learned that building resilience at the community level face challenge, including lack of funding, lack of awareness raising among the local authority, private sectors, and ensuring the sustainability. The important measure to enhance the resilience are the financial investment in infrastructure projects combined with the livelihood and housing solution, community participation, leadership, forming partnership and policy that support resilience, training program for stakeholder and adapting participatory and integrated approach, funding, awareness, training, and participation from all sectors are critical to effective build community resilience against the market risk. So that's all from my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of today's speakers and to each of you who joined us for this World Environment Day event. We really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope the stories and ideas we've shared have sparked something, whether that's a new way of thinking, a fresh conversation, or even a new partnership. The intersection between housing and the environment is complex, but as we've seen today, it's also full of real possibility and real solutions. If we work together across sectors, countries and communities, we can create housing solutions that are both sustainable and equitable, that protect our planet whilst ensuring everybody has a safe place to call home. Thank you again for being part of this journey with us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Please do, if you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter, and please follow us on social media, and do get in touch directly if you'd like to talk to us about any of the things that we've touched on today. In the meantime, take care and happy World Environment Day.